Hello out there, everybody. Manny here at Area 503. And I hope you all have been well since our last video. Today I've got something pretty dang interesting to share with you folks, and I need your help figuring it all out. So it all began when I was reading a series of news articles, and I had a sort of aha moment. Check it out. So the first piece was this article dated July 29th, 2001, titled, Space Force Launches Small Satellite to Test New Sensor Possibilities. The U.S. Space Force launched a new experimental satellite July 29th that will test the possibility of installing large deployable weather sensors on small satellites. The disposable sensors being used represent a significant amount of the small satellite's mass, and this demonstration will help the Space Force understand how that affects the spacecraft's dynamic properties and its ability to maintain attitude control. If successful, the mission could enable the service to use smaller satellites to field weather sensors. A Space Force release noted that the satellite will also provide a platform to test future space protection capabilities. So that really doesn't tell us much about what they're trying to achieve here. And this other article didn't tell us much either, but it did at least give us the name of the satellite, Monolith. Really? So the Space Force has launched a test satellite called the Monolith. Well, that's sure an interesting name, don't you think? Yeah, me too. Anyhow, the Space Force was obviously tight-lipped about what this thing actually does. However, they did reveal that the mission is a test of some form of deployable weather sensors, and that the test would determine if these sensors could be used in a larger version to attach to existing satellites. So whatever this new top-secret deployable weather sensor is, they plan to attach a bunch of them to certain existing satellites. It could be as little as 10 or as high as 100 or 200, who really knows? And I just want to stop and ask you all one question right here. Why exactly is a weather satellite top secret to begin with? That really doesn't make any sense to me. Most of these satellites are publicly known, and in fact, you can access quite a few of them from your phone with apps like Earth Now from JPL and others. So why is this mysteriously named satellite called a Monolith classified? And another question. Since this was a classified launch of a classified satellite, why did they decide to release the information to the public in the first place? They had no reason to even admit that this thing existed, let alone that it was launched and running tests. It makes no sense to me, unless it was a message to some kind of foreign adversary or something. Friggin' spy games, man. Ugh. But there is another possibility here as well. I mean, perhaps this thing isn't a weather satellite at all. It is possible because the Space Force also released a note saying, quote, the satellite will also provide a platform to test future space protection capabilities. So yeah, I don't have a hard time believing that this is no weather satellite and instead is some sort of a so-called defensive capability, which in America is what we call weapon systems. But weapon systems have many parts, and one part of them is indeed sensors, so it just might be the case that this is a test of a sensor system that would be used to track objects in space, like other satellites or UFOs. Maybe it's some sort of an advanced tactical system like FLIR, but one that scans more or all of the light spectrum instead of just infrared. If that were the case, you could attach these things to a bunch of your existing satellites, creating a zone around the Earth where targets could be identified and tracked, similar to the area around one of our battleships where the same thing occurs. Only this would be on a global level. a massive tracking zone around the Earth. It's pretty dang cool if you ask me. But it's also a little bit frightening, because what sort of a scenario do you think the Pentagon is expecting if they're building this sort of a system? Now that's going to be an important point later, so keep in mind that the Space Force is actively testing an advanced sensor system around the planet, and we'll move along to the next part. On June 14th, 2021, it was reported that Northrop Grumman launches experimental satellite for the Space Force from a plane. Okay, another experimental Space Force satellite, but this one was just a little bit different. It was launched from a plane and not from a rocket. Well, that's interesting for a couple reasons. First, most satellites are launched by rockets, not planes. Second, here's another classified launch being made public. This one was called the Tactically Responsive Launch 2 satellite. So yeah, that could mean just about anything. The only thing that we know about this satellite is that it's a tactically responsive Launch 2 satellite. Yeah, that really doesn't say much, does it? But at least the Pentagon did say that the test was designed to verify the feasibility of rapid response launch satellites. So this just means that they can get satellites up in the air pretty dang quick. No more waiting for launch windows and safety checks and FAA approval. You just strap your satellites into a small rocket, you load it on board this plane, you fly it up to about 40,000 feet, and you fire the rocket off to fly off into space. Easy peasy. So now we have the Space Force testing the fast response capabilities of launching small satellites with the Pegasus rocket. And this is going to be another important point later, so keep that in mind as well, along with the fact that the Space Force is also testing an advanced global sensor network. And we're going to go ahead and move along for now. On May 6, 2020, the Department of Defense held a webinar where they discussed a few things, but what stood out to me was the mention of the X-37B spaceplane and another secret mission that was being disclosed to the public. Listen to this.
Some people look to the stars and ask, what if? Our job is to have an answer. We have to imagine what will be imagined. Plan for what's possible while it's still impossible. Maybe you weren't put here just to ask the questions. Maybe you were put here to be the answer. Maybe your purpose on this planet isn't on this planet.
We are pleased to join you today with the Space Foundation to update you on several advances that build upon America's legacy of leadership in space. You may appreciate that the Department of the Air Force is declassifying some information related to space. For instance, in the video we just played, you may have caught a quick glimpse of a space vehicle previously cloaked in secrecy, the X-37B. This reusable spacecraft has completed 5 missions with a total of 2,865 days on orbit. I'd like to tell you a bit about the X-37B's next flight. The Air Force's Rapid Capability Office has combined forces with the Air Force Reserve Research Lab and now the U.S. Space Force to execute a mission that maximizes the X-37B's unique capabilities. This important mission will host more experiments than any prior X-37B flight, including 2 NASA experiments. One is a sample plate evaluating the reaction of select significant materials to the conditions in space. The second studies the effect of ambient space radiation on seeds. A third experiment, designed by the Naval Research Laboratory, transforms solar power into radio frequency microwave energy, then studies transmitting that energy to Earth. So mark your calendar. The X-37B launches from Cape Canaveral in 10 days on May 16th. The Space Force dedicates this flight to the nation's first responders and frontline professionals who keep America strong.
Okay, so the X-37B was running a few secret tests. One was to check the reaction of significant materials to the conditions of space. What materials were those, and why didn't they just send some stuff up to the ISS to see how it would react in space? I mean, what sort of materials would require a top secret test mission? Well, I have no idea because they're so vague, and that term significant materials could mean anything from a pound of jelly beans to a pound of stable element 115. Eesh. Anyhow, one of the other missions that the X-37B performed was a test to determine the effect of ambient space radiation on seeds. Huh? Again, I gotta ask why a test like this would be made top secret and performed on the X-37B. It just makes no sense to me. I mean, if you want to know how space radiation might affect a pack of apple seeds, you just send them up to the ISS and make a little drone, fly them off a few miles, and then sit them there for a while and bring them back. There's no need for secrecy there. And again, it just makes no sense. But this last test does make sense. Listen to this. The third experiment by the Naval Research Lab was a test to transform solar energy into radio frequency microwave energy and then transmit that energy to Earth. Wow! So we have the Space Force testing collection of solar energy and beaming it to Earth. And this is not the first time that they have done it. Back in 2019, the Air Force ran a similar test called the SPIDER, or SSPIDR, or Solar Power Incremental Demonstration and Research Project. Both of these tests had the same agenda, to determine the practicality of collecting solar energy in a satellite and then transmitting that energy to Earth. Now, on the surface, that doesn't seem like such a bad thing. Collecting solar power in space and wirelessly transmitting it down to the planet is a wonderful technology that can be used for essentially free energy. But there is one major drawback. When you beam power down from space to the Earth, you need to have something down there to collect the energy. If for some reason the power transfer misses your collection facility, either on accident or not, the thing turns into a huge space-based laser.
Crossbow, this is Watchdog. Confirm all transmissions on discriminator.
Roger, Watchdog. Crossbow is on discriminator. All systems are go.
Well, first, they gotta figure out if they can even pull it off. I guess we'll see. Either way, I'm guessing that if they are successful, the technology is going to be weaponized instead of used for peaceful power generation. Sadly, I think that this might be the case because of the top secret nature of the tests and the organizations who are involved here. I mean, this is not really a scientific agency. We're talking about the Naval Research Lab. These guys build weapons, like in 2014 when the US Navy rolled out the SEQ-3 laser weapon system on the USS PONCE.
Surface CO, what's the come back away from 5-1 where they're going to illuminate down there today.
This beam system was designed by an alliance of the Naval Surface Warfare Center and a private defense contractor. So yeah, I have a hard time believing that they would just turn this technology over to the world if they are successful. And this is going to be yet another important point to remember with the others, that the Air Force and the Space Force are both testing energy collection and transmission technologies. The Space Force is also testing the rapid deployment of satellites, and the Space Force is also testing some top secret sensor systems. Keep all of these things in mind, and we'll take a peek at this next part. Space Force standing up STARCOM to train Guardians. The Space Force has finalized its restructuring and is going to be fully operational August 23rd. The new department called STARCOM will be the main body of procurement of new satellites for the Space Force, as well as launching and testing assets before approving them for general use. So the Space Force has finalized its rank and file on paper, and it has begun. The machine is in motion. But what are they doing? Well, it sounds like they're developing and launching a whole bunch of top secret satellites, and they're also training Guardians, but to do what?
Some people look to the stars and ask, what if? Our job is to have an answer. We have to imagine what will be imagined. Plan for what's possible while it's still impossible. Maybe you weren't put here just to ask the questions. Maybe you were put here to be the answer. Maybe your purpose on this planet isn't on this planet.
I suppose it's to operate all of this new technology that they're testing. Is this all simply a so-called jobs program to justify expanding the military to create a larger DoD budget? Is it all really about money? If that's the case, why go through all the dog and pony show of the test satellites and secret missions? And then why go and tell the whole world about it, if it's all just simply a money pit? It doesn't make any sense to me. So what could it all mean? Well, I got one idea. Let's recap those points that I outlined earlier. First, we have the Space Force testing advanced sensor systems. Next, we have the Space Force testing rapid launch capabilities for satellites. Then we have the Space Force testing the collection of energy in space and beaming it to Earth. And finally, the Space Force is training a whole new batch of Guardians to perform all of these tasks, and God knows what others. Now, I want to outline one possible scenario that matches all of these facts, but I want to state right now that all of this is hypothetical, so bear with me. The Space Force could be preparing for an all-out space war, either with another country or an alien species. Let me explain a little bit better. I said earlier that the advanced sensor systems that the military were testing could be used as a tracking system for objects in space. This could be achieved if their sensors were turned towards space instead of the planet, and they would act like the defensive tracking systems on the US naval vessels, but for the whole Earth. So now that we've got a tracking system, you need a weapon system to engage the targets. That is where the solar energy collection comes into play. You could collect this solar energy and use it to power lasers, or simply convert it to microwave radiation and fire it off in a concentrated burst to destroy satellites or maybe UFOs. And to round it all off, we have the solidification of the structure of the Space Force and the official training of the Guardians. Now, to me, if you add all this up, it wouldn't be too hard to conclude that the Space Force is gearing up for an all-out space war, like I said earlier. The only question is, are they preparing to do war with another country or another planet? I really could go either way on this one, but I tend to think that the powers that be are going to try to tell us that this is about a war with another country, when in fact it's about a war with an extraterrestrial species. I have to admit that this is only one of many possibilities. However, in this case, that is my opinion about what's going on here. And it truly does sound like the Space Force is gearing up for a massive space battle. With all of the moves that they're making and all the sorts of testing that they're doing, and with the release of all this information on so many top secret projects, it really does make me wonder what other sort of top secret projects they've been running up there in space the whole time and just not telling us about. Does the Space Force have access to some sort of advanced energy generation device? Do they have access to technology that the public believes does not exist? I think that they do. What do you think? No matter what you believe of my conclusions here, you have to admit that something strange is going on within the military and the defense industry in the United States. One can truly hope that it is simply as mundane as human greed and that this whole thing is about money. Because the alternative is downright terrifying. Because maybe they know that something is coming and they won't tell us.
Let's get out of here.
That thought scares the crap out of me. Does it scare you? Down in the description for this video, there are links to all of my sources. Please use those links to go out and read the material for yourself, then make up your own mind. Just make sure that you head back here when you're done and let me know what you think in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think about the current state of the Space Force and its secret testing. Well guys, for now, that's all I got on the Space Force. So I'm out of here, guys. I'll catch y'all later.
As always, this has been Manny at Area 503. And I wish you all the best until we meet again. And I am out of here to continue my search for universal truth.